So I worked for Marriott Hotels before I started my business. And I distinctly remember being promoted into my supervisor role and going to a music festival that weekend, the weekend that I got my work phone for the first time, and I felt super fancy. But I left it in the car. And then after the festival, I went and I had like 3 or 4 missed calls from my manager. And I called him back and I was like, what's wrong? And he was like, when you come in tomorrow, here's a list of things we need to do. And I was like, we could talk about this tomorrow, right? And it was one of those moments where I was like, this is very odd. But I guess this is welcome to like middle management in corporate America. So when I started my business, that was one of the things that I had to relearn, which is I don't have to be always available. Oh, imagine that. And I learned it the hard way about 3 or 4 years into business. So around 2017, I was getting like extreme, what I'm going to call anxiety attacks. Like I just couldn't eat, like the thought of like opening my computer and looking at my inbox was debilitating. I would just lay in bed and procrastinate until the very last minute. And that's when I really started setting the firm boundaries, especially working in social media. It wasn't just email inbox, it was social inboxes. It wasn't just my social inboxes, it was all of my clients. And so that felt like a very powerful move at the time to declare I'm not always available. I'm available when I'm available, and I'll get to it when I get to it. I'm not a firefighter. I'm not a neurosurgeon, so it will be okay. And so that's something that I've translated into like now that I have a team and now I'm caring for their schedules too. Like I'd be very mindful not to add false urgency to my requests so that they don't also feel the same way. So it's been a process of unlearning that entire thing right from the beginning.
Yeah, Andrea, very similar, some similarities for sure. I was with a major investment broker-dealer company for almost 20 years. Before that, I had been on the advertising agency side, which is a whole other story there. But it kind of coincided a bit when I became a mom. I remember having to do a business travel trip. I was heading to Denver and I was sitting on the plane, and my daughter was only 10 months old at the time. And I was just sobbing on the plane. I'm sure there was some hormones involved there. But it was a wake up for me to want to have more control over where my body is, and where I'm being asked to show up. And I also wanted to do something new and different that would allow others that flexibility as well. So that was a big driving factor for me. But I continue to learn, and it still takes me a while to let go of feeling like I need to be productive at all times. And so that's still something that I'm working on, that is kind of a hangover from that, feeling like you need to be driving and driven all the time. So, but yeah, it's been an interesting journey for sure.
So I will add on to what everybody has already said. For me, I started with a nonprofit job out of college, and that led me into event work, specifically working at a wedding venue where we would pump out like, and I mean the word pump, 2 to 3 weddings like a weekend. And I didn't really learn to say no in all of that work because this is an emotional thing. This is somebody's big day. Are you sure you can't make that happen? Are you sure you can't do that one extra thing? This is a once in a lifetime thing. In the nonprofit sector, it was very, well, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to change people's lives. So you always felt extreme guilt around setting any type of personal boundary. And so when I came into at the ripe age of 25, when you know everything, starting my first business, I replicated that sense of I'm available whenever you need me. I'll do whatever without really paying attention to my own needs and my own rhythm. I don't like talking on the phone. I hate talking on the phone. There's like a sensory thing that happens where I'm just like, get off of me. I hate it. But I'd always be available for calls. I was in a highly reactive and responsive state. I wasn't really getting work done, deep work done. And so it wasn't until honestly my third or fourth year as a wedding planner in my own business that I started to set boundaries and boundaries that protected my personal needs, not just, yeah, I have these work hours, but then I wasn't really following them myself. I really had to put boundaries in place publicly between myself and the client, but also privately between myself and that part of myself that's like, you need to always be available to work. You don't get to say no, Jordan. Bend over backwards. You are Simone Biles when it comes to your boundaries. No, I'm not. I'm human. And I think that addressing that sense of false urgency, addressing that need to constantly be producing and to be seen producing so that you're seen as valuable um, was a really big problem. And also discounting myself, figuratively and literally, when it came to money. Uh, Always wanting to be like agreeable and like very like, oh, sweet and amenable and all those other things versus recognizing my business, while wonderful and beautiful and I love it, is just an extension of me. At the end of the day, no one will advocate for me more than me. No one. And I can't wait or hold out for someone to do that for me. So recognizing how that personal impacts your business, but I definitely replicated that sense of false urgency and the need to produce and give without boundary.
Oh, there's so much in there that I think so many of us can relate to with all of what you're saying. Like this, just, I think that because corporate America capitalism teaches us that we are made to give, right? Especially as women. I think that becomes doubly so, that our job is to care for others, to give to others, to prioritize everyone else. And then that piece about money, I think is really interesting too, Jordan, because I think so much of it is about learning that we are producing Rachel, where we have to be productive and that production needs to result in money, right? But it's always money for someone else. But like we feel this urge, this need to be constantly in that state. So I'm wondering for all of you, what are some of the things that helped, yes, being seen producing? Oh man, doesn't that ever like resonate too? Because like I remember the time sitting in my cubicle of like, well, I need to look, I don't really actually have much I need to be doing right now, but I better look like I'm doing something. And what a colossal waste of time. Like I'll just be on Facebook until they notice. It's horrible. So for sure. So now I'm wondering, like, what are you all doing in business, or how has it evolved for you to challenge those things, other things? What are some of the ways that you're breaking those norms? We can also talk about some of the ways you aren't yet, or that you're still like the growth edges that you still have, but like where you're at now, what are some of the things you've put in place? I heard a lot of talk about boundaries, but what does it actually look like to challenge these norms inside of your business? So whoever wants to start.
I'll say for me, I kind of touched on this with my team. So now that I have people that I work with, I feel like it's even more important. I used to work through holidays. Um, I used to work on weekends. Like, even though I had this big boundary of like, I'm not always available, I was still working. I wasn't really taking a break. And that became very apparent when I had a team. Like my very first team member I hired was like, "Oh, it's Memorial Day. Are we closed?" I was like, "Are we closed?" I don't know. I usually just work straight through. And so now, at the end of every year, I go and like block off every holiday. Here's when we're closed. And I live in Canada and we have more holidays here. And I used to follow the US holidays, and then I realized my clients actually don't care, and I can follow the Canadian holidays and take all of them. We have like a long weekend almost every month. So I'm taking it, and my team is taking it, and you'll still be very nicely taken care of. So that's definitely one thing that has really helped, even just for morale, to be able to have those days off. But one thing I'm really thinking about is this 40-hour work week. Um, my team is mostly hourly, and I'm really questioning my desire as the business owner to like fill up everyone's hours. I don't have an answer for it yet, but it's something I'm really, really thinking about. It's like, why 40 hours? Why is that the magical number? Um, and so even like how I set people's hourly rates is based on the arbitrary 40 hours a week. And I'm like, what if they're more productive in like a different container? I don't know. I'm just kind of like pulling that string. A lot of people talk about 4-day work weeks. I don't think that would work all the time for my business model, or we would have to have like overlapping shifts or something to make sure like everything was covered. And it's definitely something I'm exploring. So I'm open to hearing like in the discussion portion later what everyone else is thinking about that one as well.
Well, it's a great lead into Rachel because Rachel is experimenting with the 32-hour or
Yeah.
the 4-day work week. So talk a little bit about that, Rachel.
Yeah. So, and this is so telling as well. When I went to Maria, our talent and marketing manager, and last year in December, and said, Maria, we're going to go to 4 days a week for full-time employees. And her initial reaction was like, like meh. And I was like, is, is that okay? And what I didn't realize is that she assumed I meant to do 4 10-hour days. And that's like how programmed it is into us, that whole kind of 40-hour, again, another hangover from the Industrial Revolution, right? It was things that unions, we stand on the shoulders of folks who fought for better working conditions, 8-hour days, that type of thing. And yet we somehow got stuck there. We didn't move any further from that. So so we have started experimenting with a 32-hour week. So Maria is Tuesday through Friday. I am Monday through Thursday officially, but I have to confess, guess where I am on Fridays? I'm in front of my computer at work. So it's still a little bit of a challenge for me. And I think that kind of comes with the kind of owner territory of the business. But it's still, I mean, I still make every effort. Like if I'm sick, I take sick time. I schedule time to go to parent teacher conferences. And I make sure my team knows, because I think what's important is to model the behavior. Like it's one thing to say, oh, make sure you take time for yourself. And then you're like, what my mom would say, burning both ends of the candle, right? Like just until you got nothing left. And so I think modeling the behaviors as leaders and owners is really important. And then also kind of thinking about assumptions around what is needed of you. Andrea, something you were saying, like, made me think about this challenge that I actually, Becky helped me through, was questioning the assumptions. Like once our team started to really grow, I used to just have a habit of having weekly one-on-ones with everyone on my team. And then suddenly the team got to over 50 people. And I'm like, and why am I not having time to do any work? So consuming. And then realizing I like asking my team, like, what works for you? Like, do you need to meet with me? And big surprise, like, no one needs to meet with me every week. So now I have 2 open office hours a week, one on Monday, one on Thursday, where people can kind of get in the queue and say, yeah, I'd love 10 or 15 minutes of time, or they can schedule a dedicated half hour with me. So kind of questioning the assumptions versus me assuming I know what people need all the time was another thing that I really learned.
I love that. And Jordan, I think you, like I, may be more of a solopreneur, whereas Andrea and Rachel have teams of varying sizes. And as a joy coach, and I think also somebody who really focuses on rest as a priority, I'd love to hear how you're changing things up for yourself as somebody who's a solopreneur without that issue of managing a team.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I put that in my notes. I was like furiously writing because everybody brought up such great points. Okay, so I want to quickly go over kind of like 3 areas. I kind of want to talk about tools and where I put my attention to how I try and centralize communication. Um, and then breaks. So let's start with breaks first. October, every year, I go into my calendar and vigilantly put down all of my breaks, all of my vacations, my half day off, my full Friday off, whatever that looks like. I go in and put it in then. Does that mean that when the time comes, I follow each one? No. But it does mean that it's not something I have to go in and do retroactively, because when you do it retroactively, it never happens. But if it's like, oh, I don't actually need this Friday off, I'm good, cool. But I know that I've created that space for myself ahead of time, and that is incredibly helpful. But like before you even get into the new year, not to say that you can't do it now, but it's really, really helpful to identify maybe I need a 3-day weekend here. Maybe I'm going to take the week off for my birthday. I usually take the month of July off, mainly because ain't shit happening in July, anyways. Truly, nothing is happening. Also, it's deadly hot here in South Texas, and so it's nice to just like be on top of the air conditioning for like a month, and it's like summer hibernation. But having those breaks ahead of time is so, so, so helpful, because once you put them in, you see how much time you actually have. And when you see how much time you actually have, instead of planning with ideal conditions in mind, you plan from a space of reality. What did my output look like last year? And is that okay? And what does enough look like? And those are questions I can usually answer once I put in time off. Second part, centralized communication. So, solopreneur, I do not have a team. And I speak, I teach, facilitate small group conversations, I do social media, all these, all the stuff that happens, right? But it's just my little ADHD lizard brain that's making some of that happen. So, one of the things I really, really, really want to impart to you is you get to choose what you give your attention to, and you get to choose uh, the depth with which you do something, right? I got really caught up transitioning out of being a wedding planner into this space. I got really caught up in advice from other people. And so I spent a lot of time throwing spaghetti at the wall versus kind of getting quiet and recognizing, who do I serve? How can I serve them well? Um, how can I give them a clear solution, a proven process, and the feeling that they're really looking for when they come to me? I did a lot of like, well, it has to be this and it has to be this, and I got to do a webinar over here, and I have to clear the noise and really answer those questions for yourself. That helps a lot in terms of where your attention goes to. Also, you do not need to be on every single app. I'm talking about social media, and I'm also talking about like work apps. I've honed in on the tools that work for me. That's mainly Kartra, Asana, Airtable every now and again for databasing purposes, but I'm really just in those two most of the time. You have to figure out what that is for you, but you don't have to be everywhere. You do not have to try everything just because it's trendy right now. Doesn't mean it's even going to work for you personally or work for your clients. So you get to figure that out. And Andrea actually had a really great point last year. She was like, you can just like focus on one social media channel for like 6 months and then go from there. And I was like, excuse me? I don't have to TikTok, Reel, be on LinkedIn, and I took it to what? Okay, crazy. And then also notes on centralized communication. I have a little tag at the bottom in my email signature that says, hey, I usually respond within 5 to 7 business days. I thought I was going to get like beaten by somebody for putting that the first time. Nobody cares. As long as you give people clear answers, truly, nobody cares. Like, you'll be fine. I'm working on right now trying to take as much like back and forth communication and trying to just like questionnaire the shit out of everything that I do. There's a heart to heart that Becky did last year with me. It's my live show that I usually do on Instagram. I made that entire process like the beginning of this year very like, you want to do a heart to heart, boom, there's like a whole sequence, and we don't have to go back and forth. I can get the information that I need. You're going to get the information that you need, and everybody's happy. So if you can find ways where you can simplify communication, where you can streamline it, where you can centralize it so it's not all over the place, I think it helps me function better as a solopreneur. But really honoring what your output is and what your weekday looks like. I work every day, but it's like maybe 4 hours every day. Maybe
It's
you're the type of
amazing.
person, right? Maybe you're the type of person who wants to do 40 hours, but remember that was just a number, arbitrary number that came up. It's not something that you have to stick to. So you get to decide what your output is, what that looks like for you, what flexibility you want to give yourself, but honestly, like, what can you do with the time that you have available? So I hope that was helpful to
That
y'all.
was great. I think it's amazing, first of all, how much less we can work outside of corporate America when we get rid of all of the pretend working and all of the endless and pointless meetings and all of the people coming in to talk about, last night's TV show when you're trying to get work done. So I love that 4 hours a day actually can go very far. And I think I've seen studies that show that's actually about how much it was either 4 or 6, somewhere in there, at work that people actually accomplish in a 9 to 5 traditional 9 to 5 job. And I also love some of those specific examples around boundaries, because it's easy for us to say we need to set boundaries, but what does it actually look like? I love when I get an email, like those automatic email responses back that say, I don't check my email that often, or I check it once a day and you'll hear back from me whenever. I love that because it shows me those people are really protecting their boundaries. So that's great. And what tools help you create boundaries. So thank you for that. All right. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for everyone to participate. So I have one last thing that we can just do a quick round robin on, which is I just am curious, like your vision. You may not be there yet, and you may be in the process of trying to create that or still not sure how to do it. But just, do you have a vision yet for how you imagine business can look different, about like how we can radically liberate ourselves from capitalism? Maybe things you haven't yet tried, or just like a general vision that you're holding. I'm gonna go start with Rachel this time. Or are you still deep in thought?
Yeah, you got me a little in thought there. Um, I think where I would like to continue going is looking at different ownership models. I have a real interest in kind of a collective ownership of something. And I have a vision for that for my company. I don't know when or how, but the idea of shared ownership resonates with me. So that is one of the things that I'm looking at and studying. And I've kind of created a syllabus for myself for the 2024 to do as much learning as possible about the origins of capitalism. I'm a student of history, and I find that if I learn where something started, it helps me to figure out where I can help undo it. So yeah, I know I'm supposed to be brief here, but yeah, I think shared ownership, different business models is interesting, cooperative models, that type of thing. So I'm really excited to learn more about that.
Love that. Thank you. Jordan?
So I I really want to destroy the polished image of the girl boss, the business owner that kind of like lives on the hill and is very divorced from everybody else. And have a business model that truly serves my community and reminds people that I'm your neighbor. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very Main Street. I want to build that sensibility up again of like, it's not just, the guy twiddling his mustache is like, hey, I took all your money or whatever. But like, no, I'm your neighbor. If there's a problem, like, come to me. I really like the idea of really being in community with my community and being hyper local, even though obviously being online is wonderful too. But there's something there about reminding people that I'm here with you, I'm experiencing this with you, and I'm not so far off from where you are too. So I really, really want to build something that's what's the word? That just reminds people that's neighborly, a neighborly business, if that makes sense.
It does. And thank you for sharing that, because that's part of the reason for this whole approach every month is I want to create collectively. I love the idea of being in community and collaboration and uplifting each other. And that's what this is about. So I love that so much. Thank you. And Andrea?
Yes, I've been thinking a lot about this as a new mom and the assumptions around how um, women, especially with children, people with children, approach work. Because my productivity is on a whole different level and I'm working less than I've ever worked in my entire life. So I'm exploring what that looks like and realizing, a lot of my team is moms, a lot of my clients are moms. And so I'm exploring what that looks like, especially when it comes to like flexible work. So we talked a lot about like the 9 to 5, but also the doctor's appointments and the sick days. Oh, the sick days. And maternity leave, and all of these things that previously just weren't on my radar because I wasn't a parent. So I'm grateful that I'm examining it now. And I feel a little guilty, like it's a little too late. I wish I started looking at this, 10 years ago, but I'm with Rachel in that I'm studying that right now.
A great resource is, oh boy, is it Reshma Saujani? I hope I'm not saying her name wrong. I probably am. But used to be with Girls Can Code, I think, but now her work is solely around like mothers in the workplace. I'm finding support for folks in that, and trying, because America specifically, I don't know if everyone here is in the US, but is woefully lacking in supports for parents and specifically moms. Or birthing parents, I should say. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording and we're going to go into share. Oh, that's right. You're Canadian. Duh, Andrea, I knew that. You already mentioned it. So we're going to go into a sharing mode where we can all participate.